Today we're speaking with Chandra Om of North Carolina School of Yoga in Raleigh, North Carolina. Chandra is a devotee of Sri Dharamitra. In 2001, Chandra founded the North Carolina School of Yoga to provide serious aspirants with an opportunity to deepen their own spiritual sadhana, starting countless students on the path of teaching yoga. She does not teach, quote, styles of yoga, but the traditional, classical, Raja, yogic tradition that's been personally taught to her by Sri Dharamitra. Chandra teaches solely as an offering to her guru and to all spiritual aspirants. The North Carolina School of Yoga is the only school in the world certifying students solely in Sri Dharamitra classical and traditional practice of yoga. Visit Chandra online at ncschoolofyoga.com. Chandra, tell us a little bit about you, if you would, and where you teach yoga.
Well, I teach in Raleigh, North Carolina. I do a little bit of traveling, so it just depends on where I am. But we have a school here in Raleigh, and so this is where I'm primarily based.
Why do you practice yoga?
Because there's really nothing else to do. No other purpose for being here than the practice of self-realization. So for some reason I had the fortune to meet my guru relatively early in life, and so I have the fortune now to continue the practice for however many years I have left here in the physical body. So really there's nothing else to do beyond practice.
And how did you begin practicing? How did you find your guru?
Well, I was actually studying for a few years prior to meeting my guru, and on the surface, if you were looking at it, if you were on the outside looking in, everything seemed wonderful with regard to my life, you understand, from outward appearances. And I should have been very happy, I guess, but I was not. And I didn't really know what it was that I was looking for or what it is that I was searching for, but I knew that I was not content inside, and I knew that I had achieved in the physical realm almost everything that I had thought earlier in life would bring me happiness. And so that was a blessing, because it allowed me to realize that the answers did not lie in the material realm or in material objects or in sense objects. And so someone mentioned the practice of yoga to me, a friend, and I was curious, though I knew absolutely nothing about it, and I thought, well, I'll go and I'll see what's happening. And I went to a class and had the fortune to be even in the first class that I was in, to be under a true yogi, under a true yoga teacher, and was transformed from the first class. The next day I began a daily practice, though I am certain I didn't know too much of what I was doing, but I knew that I felt incredibly changed, and that something had sparked and awoke, and that it did something that nothing else in my experience in the years prior in this life had ever stirred within me. And then a few years later, I met my guru. Am I answering the question properly?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay,
Thanks.
all right.
Yeah.
I didn't know if this was what you had asked or not, but I, a few years later, I continued to practice, and I studied under the teacher that I had taken the first class with. Her name was Lila Stenberg, and she was a phenomenal teacher, a Kundalini teacher, trained by Yogi Bhajan. And I studied with her for several years, and then a few years went by, and then I met my guru. And from the moment that I met him, the moment that I stepped into his yoga school and he spoke to me, I knew that I had finally come home. I knew that what I'd been praying for had finally come to fruition, because while I had been studying and studying seriously, I knew that I had not found my guru, and I knew that I wanted to study under a guru. I knew that I wanted the practice, the formal practice of studentship, and that I didn't know what form that would take, because I'm a Westerner by birth, or by this is how I was. I'm a Western. I was born in Florida, reared in New York, so the concept of guru was not something that I grew up with, and so I just knew that I wanted to study self-realization, and that I believed in the science of yoga, and that I had not found the teacher that I knew would bring me to the goal of self-realization. And so I'd been praying for that in all of my years of study, that one day I would meet the one that would change everything for me, and that I could really begin to study at the level that I believed was possible. And then that first day, from the moment that I met my guru, Dharma Mitra, everything changed. And I never saw another teacher after that. I never listened to another person after that. I solely and completely surrendered myself to his guidance and his molding and teaching and love, and it was beyond anything that I could have imagined in those years when I was praying so sincerely for a teacher.
And when were you called to teach yourself? When did you feel the calling to start sharing what you had learned?
When he instructed me to. Mm-hmm. When he said to me, it's time to begin to initiate others. It's time to begin to teach others what you have been taught, because I'm giving you my blessing now. And it was not that way with all of the practices, because my guru is a traditional yogi, and so traditionally, as the disciple or the student is ready, then the guru merely instructs them, well, you have a mastery over that breathing, now you may go ahead and instruct others. You have a mastery over that posture, now you may begin to instruct it. You have a mastery over that mantra, and so on. And so that is the way that my guru instructed me or trained me, was just through my own study with him. He was able to see everything, things that were not even obvious to me, and he could see as I was progressing, if I was progressing, and when I was purified enough in his divine eyes to ordain me to teach. And then he would simply say, well, you may go ahead and begin to instruct some postures now. Why don't you begin with the basic postures? And then I would do a little beginning yoga and teach some beginning classes or beginning postures to students. And then he would add a few more things to it and say, well, I think you may be ready to teach some of the mantras now, or some of the breathings. It would progress as the years went by. He would add things onto it until I was just in it, just teaching full-time and constantly and had permission to teach the more advanced practices.
And were you making a living by teaching yoga at this time?
Making a living.
Like being able to clothe yourself, feed yourself, and sleep somewhere safe.
Oh,
yes.
Oh, yes. Well,
Okay.
I was very fortunate because as I said, I had been successful in the material world in my very early 20s. And so I was not wealthy or rich at all, but I didn't have basic monetary concerns to care for clothing and a roof over my head and things. And so when I began to teach, I did just what the guru said. I taught only to cover all the basic needs, only accepted that much payment from students, never more than that, never more than what was required to cover basic needs. So yes, I was very fortunate that everything has always been covered for me, from birth, from having parents that could care for me properly. I've never gone without anything.
So, with respect to teaching, what's the best thing you find about teaching yoga?
The best thing about teaching is, for me, is the awakening of consciousness in thousands of people. It's truly, there is no other purpose for being here. And I know what I'm saying. I'm not saying that lightly, in that there is no other purpose for being here than self-realization, than to discover your true nature, any individual's true nature, that you are not the body, you are not the mind, you are not the ego, you are not identified with name and form, that you are not the name and form, that there is a true reflection of God dwelling behind all the masks in the material world, the masks of male and female, the mask of age, the mask of social status, the mask of physical characteristics, of desires and cravings and sense attraction, that you are already perfect. Deep within, when all of that goes away, that you are already perfect within. Every individual, every living being is made in the image of God. And so through the masters who have given us the science of yoga and a path to follow, we have this science that we can employ for the awakening of that consciousness. And as you see students discovering that they are simply coming home, you understand, there's no acquiring of anything. There's never a student that needs to acquire anything within the science of yoga. You are merely revealing what is already within.
What came to me while you were speaking in reference to this was I just recently had a son. He's 1 year old now, and I remember people saying, "Oh, congratulations, he's beautiful," or, saying wonderful things about him. And I would think the same thing, like, yes, he is beautiful, but interesting that you think it's me that did that. I sort of always had this sense that I'm in service to him, and he's, just a life force here, and I'm simply here to guide him. But he's definitely his own his own person, so it's funny when people say that to me. I almost feel like he is beautiful, rather than it's something that I did. I sort of feel like it has nothing to do with me and everything to do with his own, karma or story, and I'm simply a vessel and a guide, and that's it.
Yes, but you have your karma with him also. You have you and the daddy. You understand, the mommy and daddy have their own individual karmas with the child as well. And the mother is the first guru. The mother is the first guru. And my guru always said that. And that is what the science, the classical yoga always teaches. The mother is the one who forms all of the earliest opinions within the child. Of course, like you said, the child come in with their own temperament and their own karma and their own predisposition. But the mother can mold the child. If the mother is tender, the child will be tender, or the child will be more likely to have that temperament. If the mother is calm and the home is harmonious, then the child will be harmonious, and thus the child will be a more productive and content member of society, because they will have a solid and strong, loving upbringing to mold their character, just like a guru, just like the ashram. The guru never sends you out of the ashram until you are not going to create chaos in society. Until you can really they take care of you, they mother you. There's a great saint named Neem Karoli Baba who used to always say that a mother's love is so much like God's because a mother is so forgiving. The mother always forgives whatever happens, just like God.
And what advice would you have for yoga teachers who are just beginning to teach?
Oh, well, stay clean. Stay clean. Stay clean and stay humble and stay sweet. Stay sweet and stay close to God. And remember that just like a mother, just like a father, just like any roles that we play, that you are not the teacher, that God is the teacher, that you are just acting the teacher. You are just the representative of God. And it's very easy to get lost in the identifications of the material world. It's very easy to get lost in the identification of being a teacher or being anything. But my strongest advice would be to stay clean, to stay rooted in yama and niyama, and to never allow the ego to trick you into thinking that you are anything more than a servant for God.
Speaking of the yamas and niyamas, which ones are you most involved with these days?
Oh, well, it depends which day.
This day, maybe.
It depends which day you ask me.
Right.
It depends you understand, if the mind is, what state the mind is in. If there's something disturbing. Of course, I am always trying to practice ahimsa. I'm always trying to practice just the first step of yoga. I had not mastered it yet. So every day I just keep trying and trying to create no harm anywhere. You understand, not just physically, but mentally also. Never create any harm. And then hopefully one day I maybe will have some success in being perfected in ahimsa, but not yet. So, but I think the most important of all yama and niyama is the culmination, the Ishvara Pranidhana, that one must always surrender themselves to the Lord, to what we were just speaking about, to the remembrance of your true nature, and to the remembrance that God is passing through each of us, and that our role is to remove the ego, so that that movement of the divine may be unobstructed. But for me personally, even though, of course, you always try to work in conjunction with all the yamas and niyamas, you don't wait for one of them to be mastered to move on to the others. But for me, I have not mastered any of them. I'm just trying to concentrate on ahimsa.
Let's talk a little bit about asana for a second. So I'm wondering how you sort of keep asana fresh for you and what pose you struggle with.
How to keep asana fresh?
Yes, for yourself, especially if you've been practicing, 20 years and more. I can assume that after a while some part of your mind might say, I've done this before, or perhaps there is something more. Your body starts to ask for something more, and you try to not necessarily achieve, but sort of move on.
Yeah, you ask good questions.
Thank you.
You ask good questions because most people, they don't think about things like that. When they're looking from the outside, they always think, oh, well, they must be just, if you're living yoga or that you're a yoga teacher or something, that you must just live in some state of ecstasy or something. You understand? But the truth is that sometimes you get tired of doing postures or doing your spiritual practices or something. Of course, within, you never get tired, but the mind, you said it the perfect way, sometimes the mind. And so I think the best for me personally, is that I always remember what my guru told me about that you do all the practices because they have to be done. You do not do them, any aspect of practice, including asana, with the expectation of fruit. That you are never striving for any results, as the Bhagavad Gita teaches. That if you're doing a posture, you're doing it for the Lord. You're not doing it for ego gratification. You're not even doing it to physically feel better. You're doing it because it has to be done. You're doing it to uphold Dharma, the quality of Dharma. You're doing it because you are upholding your peace of the eternal Dharma that keeps creation honorable. And that goes for all aspects of the practice of yoga. But because you asked about asana, there are days, I will tell you, that I feel a pain here, or if I feel an ache here or something, I do not feel. Sometimes I just feel I'm tired of moving. I don't want to do this today or something. But then I just think always about the Guru, and I remember all the times that he did not feel well, all the times that he was a little under the weather, or that he had taught 4 classes earlier that day, or one thing or another. And he was always steady. He always came, always taught. Years and years ago, my guru was, of course, he was teaching for many years, had been teaching for many years. Well, he broke his leg. One day, he was doing something and he broke his leg, and he was not going to do anything about it, but then some of the students got concerned, and they brought him to the emergency room to have the bone set. And they set the bone, they do the cast and everything. And Dharma left, and then he thought, well, I have to teach class tonight. And he tried to see if he could move with the cast on, but he couldn't. He couldn't demonstrate the postures. So he broke the cast off. and went and taught the class that evening.
Wow.
Why? And he never said a word. He didn't go into class and tell anyone. None of us found out about this until years later.
Mm-hmm.
You do it because it has to be done. So whenever the mind is ever telling me, well, look, you're tired, or you're not feeling too well, or you have a pain here, or you did enough, or this and that, or something, you see, I have the amazing fortune to have a guru that I can always look to as a living example of how to mold my life, of an example to follow, a living example to look to, because I have all of these years of examples of different things. I can always, whatever I'm passing through, whatever the mind may be passing through, or if a doubt come in or something, I can always think back and find an example of experiences with the guru, and then think, well, you think you have it bad. Remember what the guru passed through? It's time to get started now. Let's go. And that always does it. Always, no matter what is going on. The mind can never trick me with her games or nonsense or anything. So I don't know if that is a good enough answer or not to the question, but that is the best way for me personally that I know to keep the asana fresh.
And what is your meditation practice? Does it follow asana, or is it somehow connected with it?
For me personally, I think that it is in conjunction with all of the other practices. But earlier on, then the guru did instruct me to have a formal meditation practice that was separate from asana. So I do think that is the best way to begin to practice. That it is best if it is kept separate initially, or not kept separate, but it is sometimes easier to concentrate on one aspect of the practice individually, but eventually they all intermingle, and then everything becomes a meditation. And so for me, that is in conjunction.
And what books do you love, or what books would you recommend everybody read? Maybe your top 3 books.
Books for a yogi, right? Or for anyone?
For anyone. Or for anything. Just 3 you think that all people would benefit from reading.
The Bhagavad Gita,
Mm-hmm.
the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali,
Mm-hmm.
and Autobiography of a Yogi.
Awesome. And if you had a huge audience, what would you teach or share with them?
That you are already perfect. That God is dwelling within you. And that you may, earlier in life, or in the present moment, or in the future, have glimpses into that. But they are very often mental, abstract concepts, like, well, we are all one, or I know that God is part of all of creation. But those are all mental ideas or concepts. And that is a much different experience than direct perception, than when you actually realize through inward contemplation and ignition that you are truly one with God, beyond a mental idea, but through directly realizing that through your own personal experience. That is the gift and the reality that awaits you through the practice of yoga. That it is far beyond the postures, far beyond the breathings, far beyond mind control, far beyond mantra, far beyond yama and niyama, far beyond any of the individual aspects of practice or what we may, in the more modern climate of yoga, think to be the practice of yoga. That it is truly a doorway into the supreme realm of God, and that exists within you, that you do not need to acquire anything outside of you, and that anyone can experience it, that it is not for any special group of people, that it is available to everyone, and that it takes work, and it takes intense concentration and determination and steady practice, but that anyone can achieve it.
So sometimes I get confused with self-realization and sort of oneness. So maybe you can explain how that is different. It seems like when you are self-realized, then you know that you're not separate from God, and that you are basically liberated in this life. Then you have freedom, you experience freedom from the ego, from your mind. But why would people call it self-realized or self-realization?
Meaning because self implies individuality.
Mm-hmm.
Is that right?
Well, yeah, I guess. I think I would call it like oneness realized, or God realized, or freedom realized, or, unless you're sort of using self to mean like the greater self, like all self.
Well, of course,
Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
See, you will answer your own question.
Yes.
Because the self, that's why sometimes in the scriptures you see the self is written with a capital S, and then other times with a lowercase s, with the smaller. Whenever it has the smaller one, it's meaning that we are identified with the personal self, the ego, the Chandra, the Lara, the this one, the that one. You understand, the individual self and the self. There is no individual self. There is one self, one source, one God, and that is always with the capital S. So self-realization is the realization of your union with not only God, but all of creation, all aspects of creation in the multiplicity of universes.
And so you have a yoga school there in Raleigh, North Carolina. And do you have teacher trainings coming up, or are you currently in a teacher training?
Well, actually, we do not run formal teacher training programs. We run yoga development programs.
Mm-hmm.
So the teachers, those that do come, many of them, because someday they aspire to be yoga teachers. So in that sense, we do train them. But there's no formal, the programs that we run, there is no set graduation date, mm-hmm. meaning that some students come and they study for a year or two, and because of their depth of practice and their concentration, they are ordained to teach certain aspects or many aspects of the practice. And then others, they may have no desire to teach, but merely to come and study. And so they come and study for however long they like. Mm-hmm. And we do run one program a year that is a 250-hour yoga development program that is like an introductory course. Mm-hmm. And we are in the middle of one of those now. In fact, they're at the school right now. It's in the middle of one of their sessions. You understand? I'm going there at 5:30 to teach the Mahasadhana practice. But we are in the middle of it right now, and they will go through, I believe, January or February with the formal training, and then they have their internship period afterwards. And then, of course, we have lots of classes and other things that we offer, and other things that people come from everywhere to study and things, some longer than others.
So the public would come to study as well, then?
Oh, yes. We have lots. Because we just have classes, mm-hmm. Just classes where people can come. Anyone can come, mm-hmm. from around the world. People come from everywhere, not just for the trainings and the formal courses, but even just to attend weekly classes with the instructors. Mm-hmm. So yes, it's open to anyone.
And that's, if anyone wants to learn more about that, it's at ncschoolofyoga.com. So you can visit North Carolina School of Yoga there and learn more about the programs offered and the classes. And it's been such a pleasure speaking with you today, Chandra. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're very welcome. I'm honored that you would even want to speak with me. Thank you very much. Where do you live?
Right now I'm in Santa Barbara, California.
Santa Barbara, California. Mm-hmm. Well, you must have a good teacher because you ask very good questions and you have a very sweet vibration. You seem very kind.
Thank you. That's very sweet to hear you say that. Thank you. So many thanks, Chandra. Have a beautiful day and namaste.